Hello, welcome back to the Bioanxiety podcast. Today we have Ari on the podcast, who
Hello.
is a senior brand marketing manager at L'Oreal
You got it. Yeah.
and the founder of Exploring Manhattan,
Correct.
and also an Instagram platform that shows you amazing events, things going on in Manhattan, new places to try, things to do in Manhattan, basically, right?
Basically, yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you take it away because it's your story.
Yeah. So I've been with the company L'Oreal for 10 years, and I think that's just important to know that having that sort of corporate background, and it takes a lot of effort and energy. Obviously, it's more than just your typical 9 to 5, and that's where you spend most of your week, most of your life, really, when you think about it. And so being able to carve out time outside of that has been super important to me over the years to have more creative liberty and freedom. So I've done a bunch of things over the years, including dabbling in acting, professional wrestling, blogging, podcasting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But moving to New York City, I kind of hyper focused a little bit more on this exploring Manhattan concept on Instagram, and doing that, it started as just kind of street photography, and then it expanded more into videos, just showcasing experiences that I was going on. So the main series, if you will, is called One Thing to Try, or One Thing to Try in New York City, more specifically. So it's a lot of restaurants, because that was sort of the low hanging fruit. There's just so many and just so many options to do. But then I started expanding into different museums and like activities, and most recently I started doing like speed dating kind of events and like that sort of thing too. So just dabbling in all these different areas of what's kind of important to me in my life right now and what resonates, and just documenting those and putting them out so people can see what's going on in Manhattan, especially because I get a little bit lazy to go outside of Manhattan.
So, how do you like decide what you want to explore? So obviously, like you have a
Yeah.
busy week, right, at
hmm
work, and you have to balance that as well. So
I mean, again, it kind of just comes down to what piques my interest. So in terms of actual experiences, like one of my favorite ones, I went on a kayaking excursion. So it's Manhattan kayaking. And that's just something I would genuinely just want to do as a person. And I'm trying to find ways to, this was during early summer, so it was nicer out, of just like getting out there and doing more than just typical indoor activities. And so it's really just where do my interests align with what I think could be interesting for other people to see, that, your typical New Yorker maybe doesn't think of, oh, let's go kayaking today as an experience. So, put that out there just to remind people that these things do exist and that you can do them and that they're really fun and worth doing.
nice, yeah. Actually, I've been looking at the kayaking stocks. I sail,
hmm
but I don't know how I feel about kayaks.
You sail, but you don't know how you feel about okay.
I
Well,
mean,
do the kayaking. Like that's really fun, but like sailing is what makes me nervous because it's like all those different things happening at once. So at least with an oar, it's just you and the paddle, and like that's it.
yeah, I just think it's because I know how busy the Hudson. Well, I sail on the Hudson. Did you do the kayaking on the east
It
side?
was the Hudson.
So it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
So you know how busy it is, like barges,
yeah.
jet skis,
hmm
sailing boats. I don't know how I feel about it. So once you decided to start exploring Manhattan, like what were the first steps that you took to actually bring this concept to life?
Um, I think it honestly just came down to just doing the thing, because I'm, like a perfectionist, and I'm sure we're going to get into more of like a mental health discussion at some point. But yeah, I know for me and a lot of people, that's kind of what stops you from taking that first step, because I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly what kind of shots I was going to get, and just I basically try to pre-plan as much as possible. And that just does is postpones and procrastinates. So it was really just one day. I think it was when my brother was visiting a couple of years back now. We were just going to Chinatown, and I figured, like, oh, let me just capture and document some of this. And that's really how it started. And then from there, it's just anytime I would go out and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting experience. Um,
Sorry.
oh, all good. It's New York, baby. Um, Anytime I would go out and do an interesting experience, it's all on my phone. So it's like all the equipment's literally in my pocket already. And it's just kind of getting the reps in. The biggest thing that it took me to get used to, and I think it's an overall positive of the experience, is that it's forcing me slowly to get more and more outside of my own comfort zone in terms of just like being me. Because at first I would kind of film, I wouldn't want to bother anyone, and then eventually get to a point where you have a gimbal on the phone and you have a light, and like you don't really care that there's other people in the restaurant. You're just focusing on your own thing. But it's also New York, so everyone's kind of doing it. So that's been definitely a positive that's come out of kind of forcing myself into these
Yeah,
situations.
like so I actually hear that from a lot of people, and I honestly was the same way. I was like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm gonna post. I don't have enough
hmm
content. I'm too scared to be on camera. What are people gonna think? but you just have to do it.
Yeah.
That's the first step. And like going back to say, talking about mental health, like how now that you started this, I see that you started getting a lot of views, a lot of followers. How do you like balance all of that and taking care of your mental health? Because it is
Hmm.
a lot to do.
I haven't found the like perfect trick yet because it's definitely an area that I struggle in personally. So like I've done, just speaking of mental health, like I've done coaching, done like therapy, like doing it again now. And the reason I'm comfortable saying is because we should all be comfortable saying it's like you're okay saying you're going to physical therapy. It should be the same for like mental therapy, or emotional. So for me, it's just constantly reminding myself that it's the validation that you get, or at least the responses and engagement you get, aren't necessarily a reflection of like who you are as a person or real life. And it's hard to when you're a creative person because there's something inherently built into that where you kind of need that external feedback. Like, yeah, it's great to say, oh, I just did this for myself, but once you share it out there, it's like you're going to get either no feedback, positive feedback, or negative feedback. And it's like, how do you navigate any three or some combination of those? So for me, it's just really kind of like when I feel those frustrations or anxieties or concerns bubbling up, of really just like, taking the deep breaths and just making sure that I'm going for a walk. That's usually my solution. It's just I'm just going to go for a walk. I live in the Upper East Side, so Carl Schurz or the Central Park. I just go and do that and just remind myself that like I am separate from these things. And at the end of the day, like we only live once. We live short lives, and like who cares?
Yeah.
So it's not perfect. I feel like I sound pretty confident saying that right now, but it's definitely ebbs and flows as I go through it on like a daily basis.
Yeah. Thank you for being so honest also about going to therapy. So many people find it so hard to admit that.
Hmm.
And I'm a big advocate for therapy. Like I've been in therapy for a year now.
Hmm.
Mental health is just so important. Like no matter what age you are, what gender, like everybody has anxiety and some kind of stress,
Hmm.
like um yeah, like work. I mean, I'm like the poster child for anxiety. Um, so when did you decide to like start taking action on like when you were feeling anxious, right? Because there had to come a point that you had to like acknowledge these feelings.
Yeah. I think for me, I had a moment back in 2019 where there were just some like personal things going on, and there was like the end of a long term relationship that kind of like set me on this path of not just mental health, but also just like personal discovery and just wellness in general and what that means. And like I went like straight like deep into like with Eckhart Tolle and like all those books and everything like
Mhm.
that. And through there, sort of like resurfacing a little bit and being able to balance some of these more metaphysical concepts and aspects with just the reality of living a human experience. And I think that's where I really started getting into it with like different books and podcasts and actually going and doing coaching and doing therapy, and just doing all the things. But 2019, what that's like, what, 5 years ago now, which is
Yeah.
absolutely crazy to think about. And it's still a journey. I feel like, and I think this is really important to talk about too. When you read the books and podcasts, a lot of the times, especially like back then, they made it seem like you would just hit this point where there's just a eureka moment and you're just fixed. And I was kind of chasing that, and it's not really until the last year or so where I've been able to get more comfortable in the fact that like there may never be that moment, but it's just more of it's you're getting further and further away from being sucked down into like these negative cycles and things like that. So it's like going to the gym, where you go there and you work out these muscles, and it doesn't mean that like you're going to be perfect one day. It's a constant evolution of your body. You're going to slip, you're going to get sick sometimes, you're not going to be able to go for a couple of weeks. And so it's the same thing I found with just mental health and emotional regulation and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
I literally had this conversation with my friend last night
Hmm.
because she was like, "You're constantly seeking for that eureka moment, that moment
Yeah.
that you're like, of that you're just so happy, like this explosive fireworks." She's like, "You need to slow down and take the time to
Hmm.
actually celebrate the wins." Wait, so you mentioned wrestling.
Yeah.
I want to know more about this, and I'll tell you exactly why.
Mhm.
Because when you mentioned that, you just reminded me that I used to work for Lucha Libre USA.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I swear. And I always forget this. It was only for like a few months.
Uh-huh.
Wild experience. But can you elaborate more on the wrestling?
Yeah.
What made you want to do that?
I mean, I grew so I stumbled across it back in like 2004, and it was one of those things that was kind of like forbidden in the house, which made it even more alluring. But there was just something about like the bright lights and these larger than life characters, and like these guys in like big shape, and like the masculinity of it. But also, it's like a rock concert combined with like your favorite sports movie moment. It was just everything about it just like hit like exactly like what I wanted as a kid. And just where I was as a child, I was shy, like socially awkward, and all these things. Like a lot of it had to do with kind of projecting myself onto that, plus just enjoying just the grandeur of it. And so when I was in college, I found a place nearby in Staten Island to actually go and start training. And so from about 2012 through 2019, I was regularly performing as a professional wrestler in like the New York, New Jersey area. Then I stopped in 2019 when I kind of went on that like personal journey. I sort of like cut off everything I was doing and just tried to start from scratch. But the itch to perform like came back, and actually just this past September and last September as well, I trained for half the year to go to Greece, where there's a promotion there where the film and they have a streaming service called like Antenna Plus. So it's kind of like Disney Plus for their main television channel. And I was able to perform, and like those are uploaded there. So I didn't make it to like the big dream of WWE or anything like that, but I was able to sort of like funnel it and do it my own way on a smaller scale. But I actually went to Mexico in April, and I went to CMLL in Mexico City. I was able to pop in for a training session there, which was a wild experience. But yeah, that's the very short version of it.
That's so amazing. Just I'm sorry, but I'm like dying to go to a WWE show.
Uh-huh.
So it's amazing that like
They were just
you
here
did.
last night in Brooklyn, so
I
next time they're around,
know.
we should go.
I am I am dying to go. Like I'm not kidding
Mm,
you. It sounds weird.
okay, no, you heard it here first. She said that she would go, right? You
I
agree?
really,
Okay,
really want to go.
all right.
Um, Going back to starting exploring Manhattan
Mm-hmm.
and, just in general, like starting new things, what advice do you have for other people that are looking to, maybe start their own side thing but are afraid? Like, what advice do you have for them?
I mentioned it earlier, but it's really just do it. I totally understand the concerns of like, what if my friends see this, or what if my family sees this, and what are they going to think of me, or what if like a coworker or someone sees this, or what if like people watch and no one reacts, and I'm just putting this stuff out there and it's just awkward and cringe. Like I've experienced it. Like I've definitely put stuff out there that like meets all of that. But it's really just about kind of like finding yourself and trying to have fun with it. And the tricky thing for me, and you'll get different advice on this, is that there's like chasing the algorithm, and like there are certain types of videos that perform well. If you can do that and you enjoy it, like go for it. For me, part of what I think is maybe like capped my momentum and growth is that I want to make stuff that like I personally am proud of. And like I come from a place where like I really enjoyed like real like more in-depth kind of like documentary TV making for things like this, and I don't like making just like 10, 12 second reels. So like for me, they're always going to be like 45 plus seconds, which is like a mark against it. And I kind of go more into detail on things that some others do. But I'm proud of it at the end of the day. So it may not get, super viral, but I enjoy and I can like stand by and say like I created this thing. So my at least initial advice is just make something that you're happy with and you're excited to make and proud of, and then just kind of see where that takes you. And wait. So I would say like wait like up to a year. If after a year it's still not working, and then maybe pivot and try different things. But it takes time. Some people pop off real quick. For some people, it takes a while. So it's just go in with a degree of like patience and curiosity about like what you're doing.
Yeah, I understand that because I constantly get told off by my friends, like, your reels are too long. And I'm like, but it's like, I want to get
Hmm.
the point across. I just don't
Right.
think like a 10-second reel is going to do that. Um, how do you decide like when you release content, like a content schedule? Like, do you use any specific tools to like schedule content, or do you just work on it and then just release it right away?
So I used to try to get like super fixated on, oh, it needs to be like at around noon or 1 p.m. or whatever the time slot was. And I for a short period of time, like I need to post at least something like once a day. But it's just a lot. And I
Yeah.
realized that like when I went on vacation, the first vacation I went on after I'd been doing Exploring Manhattan for a while, I was like super anxious, like, oh my God, whatever momentum I have is going to be lost. And then I realized I came back and then I put out one video and it performed just as well, if not better than before. So I don't. again, the conventional wisdom or advice out there is to try to get into a schedule for it, and I think there's pros to that. But unless you're at a point where this really is like your main, whether it's source of income or your main like pursuit or passion, I don't really think it's that important. As long as you're putting out good content and you're putting it out at a time when like someone is likely to scroll on it, like don't post something at like 2 a.m. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's fine, especially when you're beginning. Like, don't get super fixated on that kind of thing. Just like kind of experiment with it and see what feels right for you, what fits into your life without making you super crazy about it.
Thank you. And as one last question, what is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Oh man.
I know a lot to
Uh
ask this question. People are always caught off guard.
yeah, no, and like that's like a deep one. Um oh wow. I feel like this could go so many ways. Um I think it would be something along the lines of like I'm on the spot now, so this is going to be like the most eloquent, but it's like you got this, where it's more like that inner feeling that you have that you want to put something out there, that those creative um, like inspirations and everything you have, like just follow them, just pursue them, and try not to care as much about what other people think. It's weird because I know if I said that to my younger self, it wouldn't really resonate just because of
Yeah.
where I was at then, especially. But that's what I probably wish the most, if I were able to go back and like change anything. It's just caring at least a little bit less about what other people thought and felt. So that would be the main thing.
Thank you. Well, it was
Hmm.
amazing to get to know more about you. I love your channel.
Thank
I
you.
just found a great new Palestinian restaurant
There we
that
go.
we'll be going next week. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And everybody, follow Ari, exploring underscore Manhattan, right?
Yes. Hmm.
I will tag it on the Instagram and the website.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.